back to you, Sean, or the Chief Executive on the answer to the question where it's pending?
I'm just wondering if the Deputy Mayor will be here shortly, because it's very specific to his question. But perhaps in the meantime, if I could just do a reminder on the numbers for you. I mean, in the last year of operating, the theatre cost us around $1.4 million to run. Now, around $500,000 of that, around 900,000 or a bit more of that was actually made up of the cost of depreciation, the interest charge that was applied to the operation, and the internal recharge for council's overhead allocation. So it was quite a big amount of money at that 1.4 level. But operationally, it was, yeah. So basically, around the total cost to council had been around 1.4 million, but that included, to be specific, if you like, over four. And I'm not giving you exact. I'm just rounding numbers here. Around 440,000 in depreciation, 140,000 in interest expense, and 370,000 recharge for payment to council overhead. So the actual operating cost was down around the 500 mark. The calculation that we've done, however, to sit on it as is, effectively mothball the operation, comes at around $110,000 per annum, and that really is primarily around sort of the basic utilities that have to remain in place, some repairs and maintenance activity, and as I said, security, and we have rates charges and so forth to contend with. So around 110,000 to sit on without any outcome. From in total perspective, however, while we still have the building in situ, we still have a depreciation recharge, which will be around $440,000 ongoing, bearing in mind that if we were to demolish the building at some stage, then obviously the total value, the asset value on the balance sheet would be written down in any case. So there are other non-operating charges that will stick or continue to stick.
Councillor Rob.
Yeah, thank you. Just one quick question that follows on from that. If we did demolish, what would be the loss on sale that we would need to record, or loss on demolition that we would need to record in our revenue statement in the year of demolition?
I mean, basically, you're talking about the write-down of the
asset, the write-down of the remaining book value.
Look, I absolutely don't have that figure with me.
It's millions,
here,
though,
but it's around 6 million, I think.
6 million, okay.
It's sitting around that sort of a level. I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you.
Roughly.
I think we accelerated some of the depreciation during last year as well because of the decision to close it. So it was written down to it. Yes, we'll confirm that by the.
Which would impact on our bottom line in one of those particular accounting years.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Councillor Gary.
That's right. That just, Rob, what Rob says in there, but that is just simply acknowledging that a building that we're not using now and is safe to be in and would require many millions of, well, many thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars to refurbish or get going, has no value to us now, and it would just simply be confirming, and our accounts would be accurate in saying this dear old loved building is actually no value to us. Let's be honest on our accounts, write it off. There's no cash payout.
That's correct.
So it's
yeah, although under a strict accounting definition, a 50-year-old building is probably likely to have been written off, hasn't it, over 50 years, and that obviously hasn't happened in this case. And I can understand why that is so. We had cash accounting for a lot of those years.
Yes, plus there are always revaluations that occur.
Yeah, understand that.
And there has also been over time, despite what we've been saying about the upkeep of the building, there have been capital improvements over the years which add to it. But also the revaluation.
Including the foyer area, which was significant, wasn't invested in 50 years ago. It's been subsequent to that. So
yeah, that's right.
There's different aged parts of the building, but you would assume that the 50-year-old parts are pretty much depreciated.
But in terms of balancing our books, we will have a $6 million increased depreciation in the year that, if we do demolish it, we will have a 6 million or whatever the figure is, depreciation in that year, which will mean we might not balance our books in that particular
Correct.
year. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we're going to debate.
Could we have, sorry, Mr. Mayor, the amendment up there? We've seen the motion for a while, but just so we can look at that, if that can be expanded even into the, oh, it's all right. Thank you.
Okay, I'll start. This amendment and this motion are actually very close. They're very, very similar. One of them is the amendment is saying to refrain from demolition until consultation is complete and the business case is reported back to council. Can we roll back now to the amendment, to the motion, please? The motion is saying that the theatre won't be demolished until the Waikato Regional Theatre contract is in place and been approved. And further to that, the community and the creative sectors have every opportunity to come forward with their plans up until that stage. And that's leaving the door wide open to all those who are talking about ideas and who have ideas to come to us with a business model of how it would work for us to consider. It's also putting some tension on the whole deal to keep it moving instead of it sitting there like it has done now for several years already, and it puts us in a position where it puts attention on those out there who are talking about saving it to come up with a proposal that this table may or may not choose to go with. Yesterday we voted through a $25 million $25 towards the new Waikato Regional Theatre, and that funding's been approved. Now, we have been told that in the last year of operation of the founders that it cost the city $1.4 million to keep the doors open when you took into account interest, depreciation, the overhead back to this building, maintenance and the operating costs. The operating costs alone were $500,000. The new theatre that we're proposing to go in with is going to cost this council $1.1 million a year in ongoing costs. The General Manager has said that he believes that if this theatre remains open, the city will be over-theatred, I think was your words. And but that doesn't mean we don't leave the door open to those who have ideas out there and have other uses for this to come forward. But we need to draw those people out and we need to start talking with them. And we're coming to a stage where we haven't got a budget for another $20 million to rebuild this building ourselves. So we're looking for others to come in and come up with proposals to help. So I'm comfortable with the motion and I'll be voting for the motion. Councillor Mark.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. And the Mayor talks about tension.
Are you going to do the amendment at the same time so that Angela gets to speak?
Sure, sorry.
So, just process. Sorry, Mark.
It was going so well.
Thanks, Councillor Bunting, for that. Look, the fundamental difference between my amendment that I'm putting forward and the motion is that the motion gives authority, once everything has been exhausted, to go ahead and demolish, and my amendment doesn't do that. My amendment gives founders a stay of execution until we have worked through everything, and I don't see any benefit in us rushing through with this. I was really pleased with the variety of proposals that came forward. I did think that a castle with an alligator-shaped moat, complete with a live dragon, was a very creative one, and I believe that Calvin, our general manager over there, has been in possession of a live dragon in the past, so he can add that to his job role. Yeah, the idea of a creative and or community hub was exactly the outcome that I was seeking last term when we put this idea out to the public. It is the public's building. It is Hamiltonians' building. It's been there for a very long time, and as the Deputy Mayor said, while it might not be classed as a heritage building, there certainly is some heritage love out there for it. Some of the ideas need further exploring, and I think it's a very positive part of both the motion and the amendment that our expert staff will go and talk to some of these organisations and see if they can come together to create a hub. And I love the idea of a children's museum as well as community organisations in there. But we need to know how that will run, who will own it, what's the financial model, and of course, the big question around who pays for it. So I want to thank the General Manager for coming up with that very clear and clever proposal moving us forward. Look, once a building's gone, it's gone. And as the Deputy Mayor pointed out through question times, it's not till it's gone that the public, or that we miss it, and that the public really feel the impact of that. I know that community organisations like Community Waikato and Volunteering Waikato are really struggling for space, and what a fantastic problem that is for the community to have. My amendment fully allows us to exhaust any and all opportunities that the community might come back with before we send in any wrecking ball.
in the community, and I'll take it back a bit, if you don't mind. The Mayor talked about tension, and I appreciate your point, trying to tease out these people and these opportunities, and these people to say, hey, let's go. But to be honest, there's enough tension out there in the community at the moment with this 10-year plan, the way it's looking. I don't think we need any more tension. In fact, I think what we need to do is take a cup of tea, taihoa, and really, really, really eke out some great suggestions. I remain a very, very, very positive person who believes that, when there's obligation there comes opportunity. And I think there's a great deal of opportunity with this building here. And despite going through my first ever 10-year plan, I still remain a positive person. And I think this is a really great opportunity. Quite frankly, I'll be supporting the amendment because it does keep the keys to the bulldozer hidden for a wee bit longer. While I love the idea and have advocated for an idea of a lovely central park there, should there be no other great ideas, I'm particularly in favour of the Children's Museum one. I think that's a fantastic opportunity, and I'm not nailing my colours to the mast too hard here, but of all the ones I saw, that's a fantastic idea. I've seen these facilities overseas, and they draw families out, they draw tourists like crazy. Now, you've got to remember, with our Hamilton plan, we put in the word visitability. We want to be a great place to work, live, play and visit. And we need to be taking every opportunity to relive that. I also spoke passionately during the playground debate about giving Hamilton back to the kids until we're using it for something else. And this fits right into that. I'm not going to support us spending a heck of a lot of money, but it's not expensive enough for us to keep it alive while those ideas come out, to send the wrecking balls in just yet. So I'm in favour of the amendment, because it does keep the bulldozers away. And look, if that turns into a children's museum with great play spaces all around it and a kids' theatre in there, I'd be really happy to see the Wiggles in there rather than in our wonderful new theatre. So I'll be supporting the amendment.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. We've been talking about the needs of community groups for some while, and we've actually seen that a clear need by the community and creative sector groups for suitable spaces in which to operate. I mean, these organisations, they contribute hugely to the social and cultural wellbeing of our city, absolutely vital. I've signalled through my role as Chair of Community Services that we need a strategic approach to our community leases so that we match the right activity to the right space. Hamiltonians also have a very strong and positive connection with founders, and I've always said in the debate about the new theatre and this site that we must respect the fact that this was gifted to Hamilton by our founders, by our city founders, hence the name. To contemplate a total demolition at this time is not something I'm favourable to. I think we should be looking for a win-win to see if we can achieve a protection of part of the founders and get the most effective community use out of the site. So, you know, I'm speaking, in support of Councillor O'Leary's amendment, because I think we need to do a lot more strategic thinking about that. I think I've just about made everyone a mayor in my speeches since the LTP. Sorry about that. Okay. All right, well, thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, and I think what I'm going to be quite insistent on, I'll be supporting the amendment because I think it does give us a bit more latitude, and I do realise it is more latitude, but I just want to stress in this LTP, and I'm totally unbiased and totally objective, this mayor is one of the best friends the creative community and the community sector has had for quite some time. This mayor, in his budget, proposed the major community centre library in the northeast for the first time ever. It's now a funded item, and obviously is progressing the regional theatre. So I don't want any other messages that distort this mayor's passion for the creative arts and for the community sector. The real problem we all come with here is the Founders Theatre is a building of great emotional attachment to many of us, and I'm much younger than Rob Pascoe, but I still can remember that going to the with my mother to hear the Queen Mother was welcomed by the great Mayor Dennis Rogers, and like Paula, I stand in awe and respect of those councillors, the Dennis Rogers, the Jim Bairds of this world, these amazing councillors and their staff who, through community fundraising, created that theatre, which was stunning for a city of 60,000, 45, 60,000. What I do want to hear through our process is to tease out if any part of the founders can be kept in terms of some heritage component. I also want to be crystal clear, and I'm saying this so slowly because I do get a little bit of frustration. We must look at the bowling club site and the Founders Theatre site in parallel. I'll repeat myself. We should look at the bowling club site and the Founders Theatre site in parallel. Why do I say that? Because I know that we've had expressions of interest from the community Waikato and the Kote Pacifica. Kote Pacifica, we're going to get a briefing, and they're proposing and have funding to develop a health centre, a homework community centre, a fauna, a cultural centre. It could be that the Founders Theatre site with part of the founders could actually match that proposal. It could be that, in fact, community Waikato could be looking at that area. And I think we've got to, and I would plead with you to make sure that we sort of look at the Founders Theatre site and the bowling club site in parallel. We also need, and this comes back to Angela's point the other month, is to make sure that we actually do that with the cognition of the green space development as well. So I think there's a number of balls up in the air. The Mayor, however, is crystal right. We do not have a spare 10 mil for the ratepayers to do up the Founder Centre, so we do have to look, if there's any form of the Founder Centre that survives into the future, as I see it, within this area, is to look at extra and external funding, or it is frozen, or whatever. Because I think rightfully and correctly, we have directed our funding towards the regional theatre and things like the library in the North East. But I do hope that when proposals come back to this council, for example, I hope some of the proposers might have a chat to get some pro bono architectural drawings and work, because I'm really intrigued to see if any part of the Founders can be maintained, or whatever that would look like. And I just think we have to have an open mind, and that's why I'll be supporting the amendment.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Both the amendment and the motion are pretty similar, really. They both give community groups an opportunity to come back with a business case before anything happens. I'll be supporting the motion. I have a concern that I understand the sensitivity towards the founders, and many people have sentimental attachment and strong memories of it, and I respect that. I do have a concern that by promoting or listening to business cases, we are creating expectations in the community, which I'm not sure if we actually should be entertaining. They're well-meaning, these approaches that we're seeing, and creative and all that sort of thing, but I do have a sinking feeling that if we pursued them, that's going to cost the ratepayers more money. We're going to need to reinstate the building, we're going to need to maintain it, we're going to need to pay for depreciation, operating costs. There's always a possibility that these things fall over, and then we need to come to the party then as well. Don't mean to sound like a negative person, but I'm just trying to be realistic. I think we need to be honest about the financial circumstances we're in. We don't have an endless supply of money, and we should well know that, having sat here for the last few days. Don't forget, we're probably going to have a regional theatre. We approved 25 million for that yesterday. That's going to cost $1.1 million a year. I don't think we should be paying the cost of that as well as something at the Founders. And I think the other thing for me is that it's a very big building, it's a big cavernous building, it's an old building. Some of these ideas that are coming up, that are coming forward, I don't know if they're actually even suited to a building like this. I can't help but thinking they'd actually be suited to a more modern building that's smaller, and that isn't going to be so expensive to maintain, and also a little bit, I'm concerned that, you keep parts of the building, you lose parts of the building, how good is it actually going to look? Having said all that, let's give them an opportunity to come forward, and I will keep an open mind, but I'm flagging that first and foremost for me is the financial side for the ratepayers. Thank you.
Councillor Dave.
Thanks. I think Jeff made a good point about the potential suitability of that building for lots of uses, but I would rather follow the processes outlined by Deputy Mayor Martin. I look at the precinct, that whole stretch, look at the mix of organisations you could have there, the mix of facilities. Like Councillor O'Leary, I was fairly intrigued at some of the submissions, so I didn't actually pick up the dragons and the pool one, but I did think that the Deputy Mayor, who's a great favourite of green space, would like the one where the people want to demolish the theatre and build a high-rise car park for the 5 rugby games we have each year. Or the other one I thought was totally on the mark, said stop paying for prisoners to have luxuries like basketball courts. I could really see the relevance of that. More seriously, I think Rob asked a good question before, are we over-theatred? And if you ask the arts creative community, they would say, no, we're not over-theatred, we want at least another half dozen. But the reality is, I think, for most of the population, that we're getting up there if we aren't already over-theatred, which is one reason why I thought we need to open this up to wider than just the creative sector, and there's quite a lot of overlap between the creative and community sector actually, and you could have something that fitted a wider bill than the traditional performing arts, for instance, but still had an art theme. One thing I want to touch on at the end though was there's been an image or impression given that the councils of the past ignored all sorts of triggers and suggestions to do it, to revamp or upgrade or fix founders. Nothing could be further from the truth. In my time on council, for instance, I've voted for, and it's gone through, a whole lot of fixes. Fixing up the load-bearing floor and placing a grand piano in there, for instance, these are all sort of $1 million type of arrangements or close to it. Fixing up, redoing the front of house, adding stuff to that. Adding a green room, a whole lot of, in fact, fixing the fly system. We spent several $100,000 on that once. That actually happened. It just needed more fixing later on down the tubes time. And most of those were requests from the creative community because the facility wasn't up to scratch for them, and our staff recommended that to council and it was supported by council. So I think it's very wrong to give the impression that council didn't do anything. The one thing it didn't do was the major upgrade, and that was at the same time that we delayed major upgrades for roading and water and sewerage and so forth as well. So the impression that we didn't listen to the things that were put in front of us is totally wrong. There was never a suggestion of it being an earthquake risk until the final report came to council from the chief executive that caused it to be closed down. And then we had a look at it and found it was an even bigger earthquake risk than was assumed at that time. So the councils in the past, apart from the one major upgrade, have actually spent a lot of money, and someone should get a report together counting that, on that theatre down there. It just was a never-ending sort of money soak pit, really, unfortunately. But I am going to support the amendment because I don't want us to lock in exactly what we're going to do until we hear what other possibilities there are out there.
Yeah, look, I think the amendment gives us an opportunity for some time for that sector to get some proper consultation. I refer to the discussion on the waters where I don't believe our consultation did provide, having analysed the answers, did provide clear certainty around what the consultants understood by the waters project, and yet even then we failed to consider seriously what we were told in the consultation. I look back at the minutes of December the 9th, 2014, and I'm pleased that Councillor McPherson and Deputy Mayor Gallagher have changed their view on the Founders Theatre, because I can remember I can remember specifically that an amendment was put up by Councillors King and Mallett not to spend the $13.8 million on the fly tower and the upgrade of the theatre, and that amendment almost got passed. It was six.
Point of order. The honourable members misrepresenting my position.
Do you want me to read the minutes?
I think it's very difficult going back to a decision from a long time ago.
No, 14. It was the last long-term plan, Mayor.
I seek leave to make an official statement.
Excuse me, Deputy Mayor. It's very difficult to go back that far in the context of what happened and refer to that. So could you please move on and leave that item behind?
All right. I'll just make the point. Thank you. So I'll be supporting the amendment because I don't think it gives us anything worse than the motion. It just buys us some time to get some proper consultation done and to bring to the table all of those groups, some who might not have come to the table with their projects. I also have concerns about the potential cost to council, and I would be looking at these business cases with an open mind, that I would expect the business cases to be largely funding what work needs to be done on the Founders Theatre to bring it up to standard. Thank you.
Councillor Leo.
I'll be supporting the motion. And my understanding of the Founders is that the walls could possibly move during an earthquake, in which case the roof would fall in. So I'm pretty sceptical about whether it's $5.7 to $12 million to actually fix it. Looking at the various submitters' proposals, there's quite a range of things which people are wanting to use it for. But there's only 10% of the ratepayers out there are actually prepared to pay a few more dollars in their rates bill to actually fund this remedial type work for the theatre. Yesterday we approved $18.5 million for the Rototuna Town Centre for a community hub. The proposal, of course, is that we could have either creative or otherwise another community hub. I'm just a bit concerned that these community hubs are starting to become like bowling greens around the city, where we've got a hell of a lot of them with nobody using them. When I look at the 110,000 per annum, every day that theatre is sitting there is actually costing us $302 per day, which is $2,115 per week. So that's a lot of cups of coffee. So what we really need to do, of course, is to make a decision on this, and let's move on with it.
Okay, we'll go to the board to vote. So we're voting first on the amendment.
The amendment is declared equal.
Carried.
The amendment is carried 8-4, sorry.
So the amendment now becomes a substantive motion, so we're now voting on the motion, on the new motion.
The amendment as a substantive motion is carried 11-4, 1 against.
Okay, so before we go to public excluded, we're going to go to public excluded, then we're going to just start on that. We're not going to get into any of the items, and we're going to stop for lunch. So, Libby, it's unlikely, media in public, it's unlikely we'll be back in here. We'll stop for lunch until 1 o'clock. And so I would take it'll be at least half an hour after that, before we'll be back on again, just so you can have an extended lunch.
No?
We're stopping in a few minutes for lunch until 1 o'clock.
Oh, good, because I want to see the graduation parade, my stepson.
And
Into a public
we'll go
exclude,
into
are we?
public excluded before we break now, and we'll just start talking about the basics on that for 5 minutes before we stop. Secondly, before we go back into, from this item, we go back into the long-term, after PX, we go straight back into the long-term plan, where we're going straight into debate on the two items that we asked questions on yesterday. So we're not going back to questions, we're going directly into debate on those two items. And that's where we had got to yesterday. And,
Contributions and developer dividends.
yep. And as the table happy, once we move back into long-term plan, that we go back to 2-minute speeches plus 1 minute, right of 1 minute extra to keep things moving. 2 minute with 1 minute extension.
30 seconds with a 15 second.
Yes.
Keep some sort of rein on the questions and answers. I'm pretty sure that's where the flab is in the system. Maybe we could either restrict the numbers or the length of the answers, because some of the answers get pretty weighty as well. So if we could somehow get you to keep a reasonably tight eye on that.
You're telling me to shut up, Councillor Buttling?
Not in so many words. Politely.
Agree that we should be limited in questions. There is a lot of missing information in these reports, and I think that we should have relative freedom in asking questions. It's your job to pull the questions out that aren't questions or off point, but I think we should have the opportunity to ask as many questions so that we can get a better feel for the information that's in the report and what might be missing.
Restrict the quality of the questions. I take your point on board. It's just I wonder if we can somehow. That's where the flab is in the system at the moment. That's all.
Yeah, I'll be a bit firmer on that, and but the 2 minute speaking time is somewhere we can definitely save time.
Okay.
It's over an hour to go around this table purely on debates when we have 5 minutes speaking each. So we'll now move to public excluded. And I need a mover, James, seconded by Councillor Rob.